Tanya Unkovich has experienced many of life's lessons, and the most difficult, though, was the loss of her husband, Philip Morrow, to cancer in April 2005. Tanya joins us today to share more on her unplanned journey and talk about her triumph in life and in death. And we are so glad that you could be with us, coming all the way from New Zealand.
That's right. Yes, thank you.
Right. Well, tell us a little bit about what your marriage was like and what your husband was like, because you say that he was actually one in a million.
He was, and he used to say he was one in a million as well, actually. We were together 8 years, and it was very much a marriage that was held together with respect. Great respect for one another, and we were the best of friends, and that was why the love was so deep, I believe.
So what happened when Phil was diagnosed? Was it something that he knew was happening, or was this just a big surprise to both of you?
Well, he actually had a lump under his arm for probably 8 weeks, and he didn't tell me about it. He just thought it was an infection of some sort. And one day he said to me, "Tan, I think I need to go and see a doctor." And for Phil to say that, I knew it was something bad, because he hated doctors. And so it was when we went to the doctor, and within 2 weeks after that, we were told that it was actually cancer. So it was a big shock.
And it was a very extreme and aggressive form as well.
It was very, very aggressive, and he was quite advanced in his diagnosis already, which is why it was only 5 months before he passed away.
Wow. Now, what was your reaction when he was diagnosed, both of you actually?
He was actually told on his 48th birthday, and we were waiting the entire day for the phone call from the doctor. He was about to cut into his birthday cake. I had a very bad feeling about it, because it was such a long time from the biopsy and we still hadn't heard anything. So deep down I had this fear that it would be cancer. Phil just thought, no, there's no way that God's going to take me from this earth. I've got too much to do. So when we were told on that evening he had a phone call from his doctor, I went into a state of panic and terror. And I believe Phil's response was shock, because he just didn't expect it at all.
Right.
And from that point, how did you kind of walk through even those first few days, first week or two, in dealing with this traumatic news regarding the advancement and the stage at which this cancer had already infected his body?
Sure. It was actually the following morning that we found out that it was secondary cancer that he had. So there was a major tumour somewhere else in his body, and they had to find that. I've told many people that actually that first week for me was the worst, because it's terror that you feel, and you know that no matter what the outcome, your life is never going to be the same. And for me it was the worst. Phil, I believe, was in shock, and he didn't think that it was going to mean that he was going to pass away. He thought, no, I'm going to be fine.
Now, what type of treatment did you both decide on doing?
Well, Phil was very much for everything as natural as he possibly could. And he was asked to do traditional therapy, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, but he chose not to. He said, no, it's not something that I want to do. It's not something that I believe in. And whilst others said, gosh, this is something you must do, deep down he said, no, I will walk beside God, and my fate is decided. So he chose not to.
Right. Now, he was very strong in his faith with God, wasn't he?
Oh, very much so. And it's something that grew in our marriage, and I believe it's one of the things that kept the marriage so strong was our faith.
Unplanned Journey is basically the journaling and the diary that Phil kept and that you kept as well during this time. Was that a practice that he started with after the diagnosis, or had he been kind of used to keeping his thoughts down on paper?
Well, interestingly enough, it was 6 months before he was diagnosed he started to keep a journal, but it was very factual, and it was all business-type documents and things like that.
Woke up at 8:36 a.m.
Absolutely, absolutely. There was nothing there that was feeling. It was all content. Yeah. And then once he was diagnosed, feeling started coming out as he was writing, and then it was discussion with God and prayer and bargaining, and his deep thought and feeling and pain was coming out in those pages. So it was a great process for him. I've been journaling all of my life, and so for me it was natural, but it was really difficult for me to journal during his illness because the pain that would come up was too great. So,
even with the pain, though, did you find that journaling helped? Because I know a lot of people say that it really helps them through it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's a process that I use every day now.
Right.
So.
What were some of the things that helped you the most walking through that difficult time, and then even, subsequently after Phil's passing?
Most certainly our faith, absolute trust and abandonment to whatever God's will is for us, and one day at a time. That was the only way I could cope. Every day I would get up and say, okay, all I need to do is tackle whatever happens today and surrender every day.
At one point or at any point, did you ever question God or kind of get upset with him, Lord, because this is a man that you absolutely adored? How could he let this happen?
I wasn't upset with God until 6 months after Phil passed away. That was when some anger came out. Prior to that, during his illness, I just kept saying, your will be done, and help me to accept that.
What was the help that you received? How important was it, the help that you received from your family as well as from, the church community?
They were amazing. My parish priest was amazing for me. Members of my parish, my family, my parents have been wonderful. I've got some friends who are therapists, so they were fantastic with me. They knew how to be with me. They knew how to accept when I was up. They knew how to accept when I was down, and they just let me be.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to have that sort of support.
Now, Tanya, I know that, some people watching now might have friends or family that are going through a struggle with cancer. And sometimes you don't know how to engage with that person or with that other family. What are some things that are helpful, and what are some things to kind of avoid, when it comes to dealing with the situation?
Fear can come in and take over. And when that happens, it's about prayer and saying, Lord, stand beside me, because the fear is the thing that I found the most difficult. And to just absolutely trust in His will. Once again, just taking that one day at a time for me was vital. There was no way in the world I could have projected what's going to happen in 6 months' time. I had to stay absolutely present in the moment and sit with whatever was happening for me at the time.
Now, he ended up passing away in April of 2005. What has the journey been like for you so far?
It's hard to describe. It's been at times terror. At times I felt the most incredible peace because I just held on to God's hand so tightly and I felt His presence so much. And extraordinary things have happened for me since Phil passed away, so it's left me in no doubt that he's in a marvellous place and that I'm being taken care of. I've been shown all the time. So for me, it's been a strengthening of my faith, believe it or not.
And then also you have gone into counseling, and you're also a life coach, and one of your passions is to help people that are going through difficult times or sometimes when life throws you a curveball as to where to go from there.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was a desire that I had actually before Phil was diagnosed, and I remember telling him when I was studying to be a therapist, I really would love to work with the terminally ill one day. And then, of course, it was Phil, and I had no idea, but it was like an apprenticeship God had me on in order to go through this act with Phil.
What were some of the most poignant moments or surprising moments within that time of Phil's, battle, those months there? What were the moments that kind of stood out as really significant?
A lot of them were the times that Phil and I shared and some of the words that he said to me. And one in particular was when he couldn't help himself as much, and so I would towel him down or assist him in shaving, and he was sitting in a swivel chair looking at himself in the mirror, and he said to me, "Look at my body, Tan." And then he said, "This is God showing me that this life is all about the spiritual and not the physical." And I always remember those words because to me that is so true. It is about that. The other moment that was the most difficult but the most beautiful was actually the time that Phil and I had before he passed away. It was 150 minutes, I call it, and there was so much peace in the room during that time. I'll never forget that. And it was as if I said to God and all the angels up there, okay, you've got to just stop working everywhere else and be here with us. And that's what it felt like.
Right. Wow. Oh, Tanya, along with the book, you also have a workbook that goes with it. Tell us a little bit about the workbook and how it kind of works together.
Okay. Well, that's actually a book that people can use like their own journal. And I've put questions through that so you can write in there and answer the questions if you're going through grief or any form of life transition, whether it be divorce or separation as well. And they're all the tools that I've used. They're tools that I've used not only through this process with Phil, but through my life, and I've just captured them all there.
Right. You know, Tanya, you've been through it yourself. You're now a counselor. You're a life coach. For people that are watching today that may be going through this very difficult time, of whether it's losing someone or some other difficult situation, what words of advice would you give them to kind of help them get through it?
Absolute trust. And we're all placed on a journey, and we never quite know where it is and where it's going to. But I've just continued to trust, stay close to God, and just believe that His will is best for me.
Well, Tanya, thank you so much for coming and being with us again. The name of the book is called Unplanned Journey. If you'd like to connect with Tanya, you can visit us online at harvest-tv.com. Click on Show Info in the menu bar, and you'll find an easy way to link to her website. Also, if you're going through a difficult time right now, you can give us a call at Prayer Line right now at 1-800-365-3732. We'll be right back.